Welcome back to another Battlefront update. After a few weeks of speculation on what the new reinforcement classes would be, such as whether they'll be ARC Troopers, Commandos, or even Magna Guards, we have now learned today that they'll be in fact the ARC Troopers for the Republic and the BX Series Droid Commando for the CIS. Both units will be part of the new Infiltrator reinforcement class and will also have their own new star cards for their abilities. First off, the ARC Trooper is a gun-ho attacker that rushes into the battle wielding his trusty DC-17 pistols. The ARC Trooper can dual-wield pistols and fire them independently, effectively doubling his rate of fire. With short-range blasters, the ARC Trooper needs something more versatile for his distant foes. To extend his reach, the ARC Trooper's Power Blast ability overcharges his primary pistol to fire a powerful blast, giving his otherwise short to medium ranged arsenal a ranged attack that can also be useful against vehicles. Aim your shot well and it might just do well against an enemy villain too. For additional battle awareness, the ARC Trooper can activate his helmet scanner, which lowers his Ranger Finder. This emits continuous scan pulses to reveal enemies even through walls. The time between pulses is longer than how long enemies will be revealed by each pulse, so you'll still need general battle awareness not to lose track of your foes. Finally, when encountering a powerful enemy, the ARC Trooper can even the odds of his shock trap. It's a throwable device that is manually detonated and delivers electrical current that knocks down any enemies within its range. This is useful for both flanking larger groups of enemies and for tipping the scale in favor for you and your allies, including also if you need a tactical retreat. Overall, the ARC Trooper makes an excellent addition to the clone army. It's a very strategic unit, and has the best results when played in such a way. Flank your enemies and support your troops for the best results. The BX Droid Commando for the CIS, on the other hand, is arguably one of the most lethal units in the Separatist army. Armed with a modified E5 blaster rifle, commonly used by the B1 battle droids, the BX trades rate of fire for higher precision and long-range encounters. With the modified blaster covering the BX at longer ranges, it also wields a vibro sword to get the edge it needs to excel in close quarters combat. Using either the melee button or the Sinister Strikes ability, both which have the same function, the BX droid can unleash up to 3 sword strikes in a row before requiring a brief cooldown. While the strikes don't deal that much damage than a regular trooper's melee, they are significantly faster and the final strike is so much more powerful that it'll knock down an enemy to the ground. The BX can also deploy a smokescreen by throwing a smoke bomb at its feet. The surrounding area will then be filled with a very dense smoke that even removes the basic UI elements like name tags and outlines, so the enemy view will be blocked. Additionally, you can pair the smokescreen with its final ability, Thermal Vision, for a devastating result. This makes the BX's eyes glow red, and allows it to see where the enemies are located, including through walls and other obstructions. And this ability also scrambles enemy scanners to further confuse and disorient them. This set of abilities, combined with a higher than normal sprint speed, makes the BX a lethal opponent before you see it, and if you don't take it down before it closes the distance. These two will share the star cards for the new Infiltrator class, which will have a total of 5 star cards, called Evasion, Desperation, Interrogation, Acquisition, and Stalker. Like with any reinforcement class star cards, these will aid players in certain situations and provide buffs to specific abilities for your Infiltrator. These 2 new reinforcements will deploy alongside Titan mode this month. The next community transmission will detail that mode fully, including what it's going to be officially called, and what objectives players will have in it. The full update itself is slated for release on the 26th of March. And yeah, the Infiltrator class is available without any credit costs for all players, so no need to worry there. Now for where the specifics are concerned, we know that the Infiltrators will have a base HP of 350, and also be available in arcade mode. Damage-wise, the ARC is set to do the same as the current blaster pistols in the game, with the exception that he has 2 instead of 1, of course. Meanwhile, the BX does a bit more damage than the current unmodified E5 in the game, which makes sense as you'd expect it to be a bit more deadlier than a simple infantry unit. As for the battle point cost, that's still being tweaked around, but apparently it won't be drastically any different than the current existing reinforcements in the game. Personally, these 2 reinforcements sound really cool and should be a lot of fun to play with. I love how DICE stuck to the original ARC Trooper design, even though DICE's ARC Trooper Pauldron looks like it doesn't have any textures on it, which I don't know about that one right there. I'm assuming this is because they weren't applied to this image for whatever reason, because otherwise without them it would just look horrible. Meanwhile, I love how unique the BX Droid Commando is with its Vibro Sword, focusing more so on melee than long-range blaster combat. It should definitely add a new element of play for the CIS, which I can imagine will work very well on some maps like Naboo, especially the end phase. But with that all out of the way, we have to now talk about the elephant in the room, and why we got what we got. And the simple reason for this is to save not only on time, but to also reuse already available assets. As let's back up here for a second. As most of you know, ARC Troopers were originally supposed to come out in the game back at release, and were going to be the Enforcer class for the Republic. Then for reasons not privy to us, DICE changed that and replaced them with Wookiee Warriors just before the game's launch. This likely being that they wanted to put ARCs now as the Sentinel class, while having Droidicas as the Sentinel for the CIS. But then as we all know, Droidicas ended up being far too difficult for them to program, so DICE just scrapped the whole class entirely. But they did already for the most part finish the ARC Trooper, and since 2017 had no idea what to do with it. So when deciding to add the Infiltrator class, they thought they can save time and resources by just reusing the already for the most part finished ARC Trooper assets, instead of creating Clone Commandos from scratch. Meanwhile, since they didn't have anything else for the CIS other than the unworkable Droidicas, DICE had no choice but to create the Droid Commandos, which took them the most time, and the funny thing is, they weren't the original plan either. And we'll get to that a little later. But yeah, I get that. Why wouldn't you want to use something you originally created back in 2017? Especially seeing how they don't have the manpower to create a proper Infiltrator reinforcement like the Clone Commandos from scratch. When Jay Ingram was even asked by a player on why DICE couldn't just make the Clone Commandos as they should have, he replied by referring that individual to the careers page, suggesting if they had the devs available to do it, then they likely would have had it done. And the sad part is that, believe it or not, but we were also very close to not even getting the BX Droid Commandos either. As Jay also admitted that DICE were originally planning on just taking a regular B2 battle droid and enhancing it, and just make it a new reinforcement instead. And yeah, that would be super lazy on their part, especially after not wanting to do Clone Commandos. But it's likely they realized the serious pushback they would have got from doing this, and figured that at the very least they should do proper commandos for one of the factions than none at all. Jay then later put out his explanation for why we got ARC Troopers instead of proper Clone Commandos, giving 3 reasons for this, first being that they wouldn't balance out the BXs, that the ARC Troopers were also faster to make, and that Clone Commandos are barely explored in canon. And, well, this is where I've got to call out the BS here. Number 1. Commandos would balance out the BXs just fine, as both are commando units, doing the same exact job, infiltration, and both also have melee capabilities. The Droid Commandos with their Vibro Swords, while the Clone Commandos have their Knuckle Plate Vibro Blades. Second reason, yeah, he's right there, as I previously mentioned. ARC Troopers were already done for the most part, so fair enough. Now his third reason about the Commandos not being properly explored enough in canon so they can't really do much there, that excuse right there just made me facepalm, I'm sorry. If a lack of canon lore is their excuse, then I've got news for him. Because I'm not sure at this point if he didn't realize or someone didn't tell him yet, but DICE literally created new canon in Battlefront 2 with their single-player campaign. As well, even went as far as completely introducing new clone legions. Not to mention Death Troopers, which are in the game. I mean, just look at them. They're also just as mysterious in canon. But yet, that didn't stop DICE from adding them as reinforcement in the game, so yeah. I'm not really buying that canon excuse one bit. Not to mention some of the other non-canon stuff that does appear in this game, That's one thing that really annoys me about DICE. They say they care about canon, but then they don't care about canon and do some non-canon stuff, and they care about canon, but don't care about it. Care about it, don't care about it. Like, come on, make up your mind. It's clear as daylight that doing the ARC Troopers instead of the Clone Commandos was the easy shortcut to this. And I'd prefer if they were just straight up honest about this, rather than treat their player base like children and giving such bad excuses. As for Jay's suggestion on Droidekas being the better counterpart for the Clone Commandos, then no comment on that one, as I can go on days on how much that doesn't make sense at all. Also, judging the Infiltrator class by the name itself, the choice here isn't as good as it should be. The ARC in ARC Trooper stands for Advanced Recon Commando, which is a subclass of Commando, so they aren't considered full Commando units per se. Recon is short for reconnaissance, which is defined as the exploration of an area to gain information. Essentially, it's scouting. Meanwhile, infiltration is far more than that, as it's defined as advancing into enemy rear areas and possibly isolating them for attack by follow-up troops of heavier weapons, which we know ARCs don't do that. That's the primary job of the Clone Commandos, their whole reason of existence. ARCs are the units that come in to support and lead the main attack force, which is literally how DICE define and explain them too. No mention whatsoever of infiltration of any kind. But granted, ARCs are skilled enough that if they wanted to, they could carry out small infiltration missions. But even then, I wouldn't necessarily call them infiltrators per se, as they don't have the training or the tools to do the larger heavy-duty infiltration operations. And that's okay, because that's not part of their job, and that's the whole point the Republic introduced Clone Commandos in the first place. To do just that, which ARC Troopers don't do. Also, unlike Commandos, ARCs are chosen for their distinction on the battlefield, their skills in battle not based on their infiltration skills in any way. Now, in a perfect world, we would have both Clone Commandos and Droid Commandos for the Infiltrator class this month. And if DICE so badly wanted to use their ARC Trooper assets, then they could've just gone back to their original plan and just have the ARCs replace the Wookiees as the Enforcer class for the Republic. Then that way we'd get both ARCs and Commandos and everyone would be happy. Well, except EA, who would have to fund more resources and developers to DICE for a game that isn't really making them much or any money right now. But yeah, I really wanted to explain this whole situation as I know a lot of people have questions and concerns regarding it. And since I know no one else on YouTube goes in depth into these sort of things, then I had to cover it. Either way, I'm still overall happy with the new reinforcements, and I can't wait to try them out. Oh, and also before I forget, it seems that DICE have changed their plans once again and we won't be getting the community transmission on Titan mode this week anymore, as that has now been delayed to next week now instead. So we're gonna have to wait until next week for anything new Titan mode related. And because of how long this video has now got, I decided I'm gonna save in talking about the large scale arcade mode in its own separate video sometime, I don't know, later this week, as I'd rather it gets its own video and the attention it deserves than be piled on as secondary stuff to these official community transmissions. I know some people may not like that decision, but hopefully you understand why I'm doing it. Hashtag solo players matter. But that'll do it for this Battlefront update. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel to not only support it, but keep up with Star Wars news, gaming, and canon lore released every week. And consider following me on Twitter and Facebook to never miss out on the latest Star Wars related content. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.